Live with you, your host, Salon Bonova. So I'm back to doing these random lives again, and so happy to do that. And today I want to talk about one of the most repeated actions that many of us humanitarians do on daily basis, and that action is actually feeling frustrated. And it's like one of those repeated feelings that we keep having and keep having accumulating. It becomes even like our habitual things that we do for many of us, and then we never really do something about it, or even if we do it in a way that's not effectively getting out of our system, and therefore it keeps influencing how we live the other parts of our lives as well, how we handle it, right? So that's why I thought that we really need to pay attention to some of the famous emotions that we have, and therefore I'm also doing a webinar again on emotional decluttering. If you haven't been to one of them that I have hosted, you absolutely have to come to join us so that we can talk about this in detail. Here I want to talk about one of them, which I keep hearing a lot, that is frustration. And frustration seems like this uh, like a gate to all the other emotions, and then everything seemed to like start with frustration, and that's why I really wanted to bring your awareness to what's happening and what to do about it. And also I will give you several examples of from my clients so that you can have more visuals to work with. So here we will be talking about what is it that frustration is doing to us, and what to do with it in case we don't like that result that we keep creating for ourselves, right? So before we go jump into details, I would like for you to think about our attention spasm or our attention span, right? I think is the English word. Our attention span, imagine like a phone battery of 100%, and we're allowed to recharge only once per day, right? By sleeping, let's say. In the case of phone, we can of course keep recharging it with different methods. But in our case, let's say that for the sake of this exercise, let's say that we can only recharge once per day, 24 hours. And in that attention span, we have like 100% of the attention. So if you were to do that exercise, what would you say? What percentage of that attention goes to repeatedly being frustrated? Like, think about it. What would you say your attention, like, genuinely, honestly, with yourself, if you evaluated how much of that goes to that frustration or whatever the feeling that comes together with frustration, right? Like feeling powerless, feeling overwhelmed, confused, uh, not really wanting to do whatever the things that come, you feel like after being frustrated. Because I think frustration comes very like accessible to many of us. We immediately think of us as, oh, this is frustration, and then all the other like subtle feelings that come with it. How much of the 100% of that attention you pay to frustration? Because I have seen that many of my clients have this feeling that frustration like govern them, as if instead of them governing over frustration, right? Like with many feelings, that feels like it, right? It feels like they just like be like take charge of us instead of us taking charge of them, right? So therefore, so one of my clients was telling me recently that she feels like there's a lack of vision, there's a lack of, or people are not following that vision, or there is a lack of structure, lack of TORs, lack of people knowing who does what terms of responsibilities, and having like competition in the team, and therefore she just feels like so frustrated all of the time, and all of her or most of her energy goes to that, right? While she wanting to get more energy to the things that actually she feels like matter, that she needs to be doing. And these are higher positions that we're talking about, right? And the other client of mine also was talking to me about similar issues where she feels like the leadership has changed, the management has changed, so therefore there are new changes, but also the how it's going to go further is not really clear. So therefore, like this state of taking over from one leadership to another, and she feels like there's a lot of unclarities, and therefore she feels like frustrated about a lot of the things. There are lots of people that need to be hired, and this is like frustrating, right? So, and therefore she feels like she's not really doing the exercises that she wants to do outside of work, dedicating more time to loved ones that she wants to do. She wants to also be cooking and doing other hobby things that she feel like she's not really doing, because what she does is after work she comes home and then feels like she's so frustrated and so exhausted that she just wants to stay and distract herself, or go out and maybe have some drinks with people, but not really focusing on other things that she said she would do. So you can see that in most of our cases, what frustration invites us to do, right? Frustration invites us to do either one of two things, I find. One is either keep feeling powerless about the situation and having more reason to complain, or more reason to uh, like hang up on what's not working, how it's not working, how it should be, how this is not, and all of these things that just keep generating more and more feelings that we don't want to have, which then in turn make us exhausted. This is one invitation that frustration leads us to, right? And the other invitation is us then deciding what we're going to do about how we're frustrated, and then take the next steps. And oftentimes it's so easy, including myself, it's so easy to go the route of how things are not working, how this is not how it should be, and it's so easy to do that. At least, like from our very wanting to react brains, right? It's so easy to just keep reacting to things, to keep reacting to things, and then finding ourselves in the place that we actually do not want to be. Mainly that allowing our frustration influence our personal life and our personal hours that we actually didn't want to, and keep indulging in that even after work, or not wanting to do anything else because we're so exhausted with our own frustrating observations or resistance, whatever is happening, right? And therefore, we don't get to do the things that we actually wanted to do. And therefore, we feel like our work is just taking over all the things, even in our personal lives. Do you see how this all going? And then we feel like we're powerless. We feel lots of different emotions like disappointment, all the other things. And then like frustration feels like the beginning stage of all the other things that come up. And what's even worse, I find, is that we keep repeating that cycle over and over again, right? And that's why I invite you to think about the emotional decluttering, or another way of me be thinking about it is um, showering your mind, or cleansing your mind, or whichever the word that I feel like personally for me, I feel like cleansing or putting clarity into my mind feels better. But of course, you choose your term, whatever feels good to you. But what matters is not so much the term itself, but rather the concept behind it. And the concept behind it is, how can we like have every day, at least in the evening or in the morning, whichever feels good for you, just the way that you would shower yourself to get ready for work, the same way, how could you do that with your mind? How could you shower your mind so that you're clear on whether you want to allow that frustration again to influence your evening or your other parts of your life afterwards, outside of work, even during work? Do you want to allow that to happen or not? And if you do not, then what are you going to do about it and making decisions about it? Instead of keep repeating the same patterns, instead of keep accumulating a lot of this emotions that like many of us are so good at accumulating emotions, right? We just keep accumulating to a point where it just feels like it's so like we can't take it anymore, and then we just want to explode, right? And therefore, I really want you to think about um, how we can actually be in charge of our emotions and deciding what to do with them, and then how to handle them afterwards. And this is what I really want to focus on. So we all know that frustration comes from particular thoughts, either about ourselves, about others, or about the work that we're doing, or whatever the thing that we're focusing on, right? And our attention span, as I said, let's imagine it's like 100% battery type of resource that we get to have every day, and we want to use that on the things that really matter to us, on the things that really matter to the people that we're serving, right? Like in my one of my clients example, that she actually wants to serve those people who are in need of shelter, for instance, right? And to bring that assistance as effectively as possible. Now, if that's the goal and we want to spend, let's say, 50% at least, if not most of it, 50% of that energy to serving those people and delivering that assistance and doing all the things. I'm not saying that we should get rid of all the frustrations or anything, because frustration may have a lot of good information. But what I am suggesting is that once we know that A, we can be in charge of frustration or decide what to do with it, and B, when we know what's the actual thing that matters to us in that allocation of that attention span, then we put the two things together and say, okay, here is the thing that really mattered to me, that I find that my work pays me for to do, for instance, right? This is where I want to spend most of my 50% of my attention span, let's say. And in order to spend that attention span on that work, then how am I going to manage the frustrating bits that eventually always will come? And that's part of our work. And it would be weird to think that we will never be frustrated, right? The point is not to get frustrated. The point is every time we decide what to do with it, so that next time we're at least frustrated about new things, if not the things over and over again, right? So that's why if we're wanting to do something about it, then I would love to invite you to think of frustration like this. So asking yourself questions of, is it worth being frustrated about? Right? Is this worth your attention to be frustrated about? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. You decide, right? If it is worth you being frustrated about, what are you going to do now that you know that this is the problem? For instance, in my client's case, they were talking about lack of structure, lack of vision, or not people not following the vision, right? Okay, so if other people are not following the vision, but you know what the vision is, how do you want to continue following it and doing the things that is within your control? How can you bring your structure to the workplace in case there is a lack of structure from others in the leading management role? So the frustration could actually be a great invitation for you to take up the roles that maybe no one is taking, or take up the roles that, or doing the parts of the work that no one is really doing, but you feeling good about yourself by doing that, and deciding this is what I'm going to do in the lack of all the other things. This is at least within my control, or this is what I can bring, the clarity I can bring, the structure I can bring, that I will then focus on those things. Then at least I will not be frustrated next time, because I will continue following it until someone else from, like, depending on the hierarchy from whatever else, then there will be a structure established. Then you will be taking up that one until then you start doing something from your part, and changing the situation or contributing to improving the situation, right? So that's why I'm saying that frustration can always invite us to either feel powerless or feel powerful, in the sense of deciding what to do with it and how to handle the situation in the lack of all the things that we believe should be there, but they are not, right? Because the more we hang up on how things should be, but they're not, then we are just, excuse me, then we're just like banging our head against the wall, which doesn't make sense. We all know it, right? But expecting that we will never be frustrated is also unrealistic, obviously. So, therefore, we really need to learn how to use frustration in the way that invites us to either take up the roles or take up making the decisions or like trying a different action than we have been doing so far will benefit ourselves in that environment. We'll benefit also ourselves outside of it so that we don't come home feeling powerless that we couldn't do anything about it, but rather we have decided to do something about it. And then here are the things that um, we took out of it, we learned from it, right? So that's why I I have been thinking about like the best way that you can shower your mind about it is like in the morning or in the evening, whenever it's good for you, is to sit down. And in my case, it really works with writing. I just write down and say, okay, I'm feeling frustrated because of these things, right? And here is what I'm going to do, try to solve it, or here is what I'm going to do, or here is what I'm not going to do anything about, or it's not worth my time to be frustrated about because I can't do anything about it. And then I just make a decision, and then I don't allow myself to go back and keep being frustrated about it. Because I feel like if I'm being frustrated over the same thing more than twice, then it's really on me, and I don't really find it useful for me to be spending my like precious attention span on that thing, right? Because what oftentimes does frustration to me is it also brings like immediate tiredness in my body, and then I just lose all the inspiration to be doing anything else either. So that's why I really feel like I want to protect my attention span for my energy, and therefore I want to feel like I am in charge of deciding what I want to be frustrated about and what I don't want to be frustrated about. And if I am frustrated about something, then I want to bring to a logical conclusion of doing something about it, because I find it's worth feeling frustrated about. Therefore, I also find it worth doing something about it. And then I start deciding what to do about it instead of just letting my brain to be indulging in, oh, this is again the same thing, or this is again this and this is again that, and then just feeling like I'm frustrating myself into the abyss, and like as if I feel like I'm getting myself into the hole that I don't even want to be in, right? So that's why if you would like for you to like be clearer on your attention on how you want to spend it, be clear on your energy on how you want to spend it, then you really like get yourself audit a bit in your own mind, right? Audit as to how much of your attention is being spent or paid to growing frustration, I find, or it's actually getting to solving that frustration and doing something about it so that it doesn't in effect affect all other parts of your life. It doesn't lead you to distract yourself and then scrolling the social media, or it doesn't then stop you from just going and enjoying your life outside or going for a date, whatever the other things that you actually wanted to do. So that the better you are able to shower your mind as to what to do with frustration, the better you will manage it, but also the better you will manage how your life goes outside of work as well. So, my dears, that's why I really invite you to this webinar that I'm doing this Friday. And I will be talking even more in details, and of course with my flip chart and describing to you and showing you all the mechanisms and protocols of how you can go about processing allowing and also showering your emotions that you don't really want to have, deciding what to do about them. So come to that webinar and come coaching with me. So can't wait to hear from you. Until then, have an amazing time and week. I'll speak to you very soon. Thank you.